Welcome to another ResoLex RADAR Talks. I'm delighted to have Kevin and Louise from IP Initiatives here, and this morning we're going to be talking about integrated project insurance. So first of all, I think there's a bit of a misnomer in the name, and I'd like to just address that. Integrated project insurance, but it's not really about insurance, is it?
No, not at all, and I think it does mislead people immensely. They think of it as an insurance product, but it's far from that. We prefer to call it the IPI model when we're talking about it in general, and it is a whole delivery model. It is backed by the insurance, but it's a model of delivery via the alliance contract, which is a flat structure. So we've coined the phrase insurance-backed alliancing for the whole model delivery.
Okay, and you talk about model here. We've been building things for a long time. Why do we need a new model?
Yeah, you're right, we have. And what's more, we've been building great things for a long time. And there's been a lot of success and there's lots of things to point at. But they are usually done despite the process. Actually, if you talk about the most collaborative projects, you'll find people saying they had to ignore the contract in order to be genuinely collaborative. That's not a good idea. The trouble is that the industry's been around so long that, that the process has maintained a sense of fragmentation and separation, which makes it very difficult to actually bring people together to get a true alignment and a true commitment from an entire team.
Okay, so what does the IPI model do to address some of this?
The IPI model is the industry's trying to get earlier involvement, but because of this fragmentation, the contracts and insurances that have grown up in the industry have now locked in the fragmentation and separation. So you have designers with designing contracts and PI insurances, and you have the constructing side with their delivery contracts and the third party constructional risk insurances. And both of those require risk to be transferred, or blame rather, to be sent from one side to the other through a huge tendering process, which just aids to the fragmentation. What we've done with IPI is we've been able to sweep away those individual contracts and insurances. We've got a single alliance contract which brings the whole team together in a flat alliance with their client and the whole of the supply chain. And then we have a single insurance, the integrated project insurance, which gives the model its name, which enables everybody to be covered on one level all at the same time. And that also enables us to ensure the financial outcome on the project.
So perhaps you could explain for us how the model works and how it addresses some of these challenges that you mentioned.
Yeah, as Kevin said, we see the industry as being very silo working, fragmented. So the norm would be that the client has a need, develops a project with architects, engineers, cost managers. It's then passed over a brick wall to a bidding, contracting team, and then it's passed over another wall to the supply chain. And actually, we feel that the message should go to everyone at once. So we don't want the whispering over the wall, so that the message is diluted by the time it gets to the people who actually deliver the project. So the first thing IPI does is bring everyone in together on a flat structure of an alliance contract, and we bring the supply chain in quite early because we don't want to...
Yeah, it's worth looking at the way we do that. So we don't have anything to price. We don't have a solution to price, which is a bit of a challenge for people. What we do is we appoint on the basis of the skills and capabilities and the behaviours that they have and are able to adopt, and we test those behaviours through behavioural workshops in the selection process. So what we're able to do is assemble the best for project team on the skills of the individuals, that have, of the skills of the organisations and the individuals that have offered to do the project.
Yeah, indeed. And we don't finish or complete the design without that expert input. So that's a huge waste area, because most architects, if you ask them how many times have you redesigned elements of the building, every time a new supply chain member comes on board, they've had to rejig something. So we're saying don't put a solution actually on paper until you have that informed deliverer's advice. So definitely a key, but definitely one of the hardest things for people to get their heads around.
Another thing we do is we work top down. So The way industry normally works is, as Louise described, you start doing design. So what happens is, client says, I want this, talks to their initial designer, which may be an architect or a space planner, and starts to build up the solution. And then other people arrive and they build up the solution, and then you price that solution, and you say to the client, it's this much, and they say, oh, can't afford that. And then we go off into the value engineering cycle. So what we do under IPI is we start with, what is it that you actually need? So what's the business requirement? Not what you like, what's the business requirement? So what's your need for this project? And what's the investment that you can afford to put into this project? And then our whole life through IPI is, how can we deliver your need within that investment target? So we work top down, all the way down, constantly saying what is affordable, what is realistic, what is achievable within that amount of money.
And that's a skill we find people find very difficult to get their heads around, because they perceive that the more detail they have, the more secure the design is. Well, we actually want to say, here's how much money we've got to spend on that element. What can you, Mr. Expert, give us for it within that sphere? So we also like to incentivise. There's an incentivisation tool that's attached to the Alliance contract of gain pain. Everyone agrees and shares that equally above and below the line. There might be disparity between an SME sitting on the board of the Alliance to one of the bigger companies sitting on the Alliance. They might take a different percentage, but it's the same above and below the line. And what that does, and that's the biggest success, I think, is that it incentivises people when something goes wrong, and it does because it's construction. When something goes wrong, everyone in that team has a real desire and wish to get that problem resolved quickly, because actually they start to spend their own money if they don't.
And what's more, again, contrasting the traditional with the IPI methodology, it's quite possible on a traditional project for one party to be successful despite the others failing. In fact, often at the expense of the others failing, whereas under IPI, you can't be successful unless you're all successful. If somebody's going to fail, everybody's going to fail. And that fundamentally changes people's mindsets to how to go about working collaboratively.
And the client is part of that as well.
Now, I know that this, you guys have been working on this for a long time. It has taken a bit of a step for the industry to embrace it and actually get on with it. And I also know that you have recently finished the first project. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Well, let's get the hard stuff out of the way first, shall we?
Absolutely.
So, top down, we delivered the project for 6.5% less than the client's investment target. So, £11.685 million, we delivered it within 6.5% of that, which meant that we freed up money for the client to spend on other fit-out activities that we didn't have an investment target at the start. We achieved the success criteria by 99%, 23% of the success criteria exceeded the requirements. So if you look at the basic numbers, it's a huge success compared to traditional projects where 75% overspend, 3/4 of them are late, and actually when you talked about the client, did they get what they were looking for, the answer is often, sadly, not as much as they wanted.
Yeah, so I think for me, because I look from a slightly different perspective, the key for me was to see if the way that the Alliance contract and the model and the incentivisation was set up actually did make people behave differently. And that's the most, joyous thing for me, and that it clearly did. Because when things first started to go wrong, people did revert to type, strangely enough. We got the odd email and other thing that we sort of had to curb in our capacity as the independent facilitator on the project. And what happened over time was they corrected themselves. They didn't need us to remind them that there was, because of the insurance product, there was absolutely no point in going down a blame route. So it's not a sort of a nice to have no blame culture. It really is completely pointless when everyone's under the same insurance. And it takes them a while for that to kick in. But actually, the behaviours on Dudley were absolutely superb in terms of being driven by the model and by the contract to behave differently. And they always, even when they were in adversity, sought the best project solution together. And even people who had long since really not been fully part of the project, i.e. the designers up front, were still on the site at the end trying to help. So really, really good feedback and experience for most people, I think.
And then let's finish that by talking about what the client got. So
Yes.
Dudley College were looking for a building in which they could teach new models of construction, advanced new building technologies. They were looking for innovation, both in what they're able to teach and in the building that was provided. And as a result of it, they've got a facility where they're able to not only provide conventional teaching training, but we've also been able to build a 4-storey hangar, which acts as a kind of external site, but protected so that people can do site-based activities inside a hangar, and they can learn to disassemble, assemble new pods, for example, or build. In fact, we suffered a little bit from the Grenville Tower issue, and one of the things that we've got is a whole wall where they can install a facade of the external cladding and actually start to do all of the kind of things that everybody's worried about with external cladding. So they got a project that completely met their needs, which is important because another little thing that we do in the IPI model that most people find actually a bit of a surprise, and certainly the insurers found a little bit worrying to start with, is we confirm that the project is fit for the defined purpose. Now the industry is worried about fitness for purpose, and it should be, because it's an open-ended, unclarified activity. What we do is we work right up front, agree what the purpose is, define it in a strategic brief and success criteria, which is what we use to procure the team, and then we put in place acceptance criteria, and at the end of the project we prove that the building works. So Dudley College moved into a building that was operational, and we don't mean one that needed a few tweaks to make it work, we mean operational on the day they started.
There was 99% of the criteria met and 23% of them exceeded, she says.
So from that explanation, it sounds as if the Dudley project went very well. So what's next for IPI?
What next indeed? We have a second IPI project already underway, which you will well know, Ed, because whilst we've long known we have some synergy, we've brought ResoLex in to do their radar measures on the Derby project. It's for Derby Museums. It's in the first ever manufacturing place in the UK. Fantastic team, already en route in phase 1. Very different sphere, grade 2 listed building refurbishment, so that's very exciting for us. But actually, yes, the client team there totally get the ethos of IPI and collaborative working, so we're really excited to be there with yourself.
And we know that one project or one swallow does not make a summer, so we're still in the trial phase. Derby will be a trial project, and we're looking for other trial projects. We're still working with the Cabinet Office to prove the concept to a point at which that we know it's sufficiently robust to be able to be made more widely available. One of our main concerns at this moment in time is that if we hand over an unproven process to an industry that has a traditional mindset, it will simply break it and demonstrate it doesn't work, because it'll try to force fit it back into the traditional processes. So we need to keep quite a tight control of it, but if there's people out there who are interested in doing a trial project and pushing the boundaries forward and knowing that it works, then we'll be very happy to work with them.
Absolutely. I think that's what we're looking for, people as well who are really enthusiastic about changing the way we work in construction. We know we have a core of people who want to do that, and we have these 3 independents that are tied into the Alliance contract. There's an independent facilitator, and there are 2 technical and financial risk assurers that sit alongside the team who have a little checking role. But we really want to sort of draw a few more people in. We're looking at some forms of accreditation for various roles within the IPI model, and we ultimately would like this non-confrontational, open and collaborative alliance to be the norm. So we want insurance-backed alliancing to become sort of the industry norm.
I think finally, we can answer the very big question that most people ask you, which is, if it's so good, why don't they do it again? And tell you that we are doing it again. Dudley have already asked us to get involved in their next project, and we're in the tender process. So if you want a recommendation from a client, I don't think you get any better recommendation than that.
Excellent. So as they say, the proof is in the eating. So thank you very much, both of you, for coming to explain a lot more. I too am delighted to be working with you up in Derby. So we will be following that project with extreme interest. So for this morning, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed.